Hello and welcome to another episode of Murder with Friends, the show where friends get together and talk about some of the darker sides of history. I'm your host, Grace Baldridge, and before we get into today's show, I have a couple exciting announcements. So some of you have said in the comment section that you'd love to listen to the show as a podcast. Well, you can do that, and also we have some exclusive content coming, but the only way for you to get both of those two things is if you go to tytnetwork.com/join, and all the information is going to be there. We're going to have the podcasts for you and some exclusive content coming out, and you'll get access to the episodes before they are released on YouTube. So hopefully that's something you're interested in, and if not, whatever, here we are, we're on YouTube anyway. Another thing I wanted to clarify is I know that I said we would be talking about Jack the Ripper in this episode. Well, the friend of mine who was going to cover Jack the Ripper is unfortunately ill, and so instead we have Brett Erlich!
Yay!
Yeah! And today we are going to be talking about the Zodiac, which was actually another episode I promised people that we would do. People really wanted to have you on, Brett, and I was like, why? No, I'm just kidding. People really wanted to have you on.
That. Why?
And they said that you should do Zodiac. That was the one that people sort of thought you would do very well. Yeah, there were people that were saying, I hope Brett does a good one like Zodiac or Ted Bundy, whatever a good one means. But there's like a spooky gene in the people that watch this show.
Yeah, no.
This is the community for just being weird and spooky.
True crime stories are popular because you get to be the judge and jury. You get to be the jury, which is weird because in America, the one thing people hate is jury duty.
That's true. Well, this is like sort of in a bite-size proportion. But unfortunately with Zodiac, there isn't going to be so much of a jury here because, you know, it's one of the most notoriously unsolved cases in modern American history. Yep. So let's just dive right into it. So the Zodiac Killer, when we talk about the Zodiac Killer, we're talking about a killer who was active during the late 1960s and the early 1970s in Northern California, and he gave himself the name of the Zodiac Killer. And we know he gave himself this name is because he corresponded actively with law enforcement and journalists at the time. And he is confirmed to have killed 5 people and injured 2, but he says that he killed about 37
That's
people.
a lot more people.
Yes.
But that feeds into the idea of the Zodiac being the kind of person you don't know what they mean and they like to mess with you.
Oh, yeah.
He likes to send it in. Another reason that they knew he was called the Zodiac Killer is because when he said in his note, he said, "This is the Zodiac speaking."
Yeah. Let's go to our first clip, which just outlines who the Zodiac Killer was and what we're going to be talking about today.
The Zodiac Killer claimed to have killed over 37 people in a series of anonymous letters, but only 7 of those victims were confirmed by police to be the work of the Zodiac Killer. One of the few killers on this list to name themselves, the killer dubbed himself the Zodiac Killer within the series of anonymous letters he sent to police. Within those letters, he sent 4 cryptograms, and only one of the 4 has been definitely solved. Unfortunately, that one has been solved, has no effect on the case, and netted no significant clues to help catch the killer. After almost every murder he committed, the killer would send an anonymous letter to the Bay Area press, as if mocking the investigation department and the media. In the final letter he sent, the killer wrote a tally out on the bottom. Me equals 37, SFPD equals 0. The 37 referring to the amount of people he supposedly murdered, and the SPD 0 referring to the inadequacy of the San Francisco Police Department. This heinous criminal would almost exclusively target younger people between the ages of 17 to 29, and each of them were either stabbed to death or shot multiple times in the head or back. This case has never been classified as a cold case and has maintained an open case file ever since the first anonymous letter came in the year of 1969.
So I think the best way to break up such a dense case like the Zodiac is to first talk about the murders, exactly what happened and to whom and how.
Okay, let's do it.
And then I want to talk about the correspondence, the letters, and how he taunted the police, and some later investigation that happened about maybe some earlier murders. We'll get into that. And then finally, I think we should talk about the suspects.
Yeah.
So just to kick it off, let's talk about the first claimed Zodiac killing, and that happened December 20th, 1968, to Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, and it was actually Jensen's first date that she ever went on.
And they're parked out on a secluded area,
yes,
about to get kissy.
Lake Herman Road.
And let's just say, like, when you're a teenager and you're on your first date, that's traumatic enough without getting stabbed and shot or whatever the hell happened to these people. That's so sad.
Yeah, it is extremely sad, and as best as we can figure out what happened, it seems as though the Zodiac Killer spotted them parked next to them, and either he shot at the car to get them out of the car, he indicated that he wanted them to leave the car, or he shot into the car and Betty Lou Jensen ran out from the car because she was actually found some yards away from the vehicle while David was in the car. So it's a little bit convoluted about exactly what happened, the order of when it went down, and there wasn't a survivor, so we don't know specifically how, but we do have a clip that gives you a better idea of this first murder of the Zodiac killer.
At a little after 11 p.m., a single car sits in a lover's lane on the outskirts of Vallejo, California. Inside are 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen. A lone figure approaches the car from the rear. In his hand, a .22 caliber pistol. David Faraday is shot once behind the left ear. Betty Lou runs blind into the night, but makes it just a few feet before she is cut down by 5 shots stitched across her back.
So, yeah, so we see in this first murder that it's very methodical, and it doesn't seem to be an act of passion. It doesn't seem as though he knew the victims. It didn't seem like he was drawing anything out. We've talked before about murders on this show that have stabbed people, that were very brutal and very passionate about this crime. This almost feels like a hit.
I don't think you can rule out whether it was whether they knew the person or not.
Right.
But because it's just like, oh, I know that person and I want to shoot them down. Mm-hmm. Versus stab them. That's just his method of choice. And maybe he's a beginner in murder. You want to do the thing that's further away. Mm-hmm. This I'm comfortable with. I know I want to kill people, but I want to do it at a distance. And then he gets the opportunity for the first time to stand over dead bodies and look down and say, oh, I was the one who opened up their bodies and spilled their blood until their souls escaped into my hands. I crushed their life spirit. Then later he goes and does more intense up close things because now he had a taste for blood.
I also think that it must have been a little bit exhilarating that he got away with it so easily. He drove up, killed him, drove away.
Yeah, but this is back in the day. That's what the thing about 1960s crime. Now, if this person was killed, especially the other ones in the middle of the city, they just go, all right, let's find the video camera on the corner. Oh, it's Dave.
Yeah,
That's
trace
Dave's
the
face.
GPS. Well, he got away with it so
over.
easily. I think that he actually didn't enjoy how easy it was and the lack of recognition that he got, because then July 4th...
Wait, before you move on, I just want to say that video, ever since Anchorman, I can't take that guy's voice seriously, because it's the same voice that says Ron Burgundy.
You stay classy, San Diego.
I can't watch Unsolved Mystery shows anymore, because now I think Ron Burgundy was the best Anchorman ever.
I regret to tell you, but we have a couple more clips, and I think that guy's voice might be featured in a couple more of them.
Yeah, and I'm happy about it.
Okay.
Because this, I don't know if you know about murder, it's a real dark subject.
It is, yeah.
And it could bring it down. And so if you just think about the Human Torch was denied a bank loan, it can make you happy again.
Well, now that we're feeling happy, I'm going to bring everyone down because we're going to get into the second murder, which took place July 4th, 1969. Darlene Farron and Michael Mageau were having an affair together. And they were out at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. They thought they were having a secluded love affair, and then, well, the Zodiac found them. Let's take a look at what happened.
He drove away and then came back a few minutes later. He parked again behind the couple. He used a flashlight and approached them from the passenger side. The couple thought that it was a police officer. They got their ID ready. And then they were shot multiple times.
As we arrived, we saw a vehicle, a brown 65 Corvair was here. We saw a body laying on the ground. This door was open. The body was about right here. Michael Mageau, the white male victim, had obviously been shot. He'd been shot up in the head area, looked through his neck, his mouth was shot. His knee had been shot, and he had bullet wounds in his back.
Darlene had been shot 9 times in the arm and the chest.
She was still alive. She was breathing. Her eyes flickered a little bit. And I asked her if she could tell me what happened, and she appeared to look at me and try to say something, but it only came out as a moaning sound.
So shockingly enough, Michael actually does survive this attack. Now, Darlene does pass away because, again, she was shot so many times. What's interesting about this murder that is different is that, one, because Michael survived, we know a little bit more about the method that was used with the flashlight. We don't know for certain if that was used in the first killing, but I think it's easy to assume that he probably did use a flashlight. Another thing that happens is that Zodiac makes first contact with the police after this attack.
When you come up with that idea of the flashlight thing, he probably got pulled over once and was like, I can't see the police officer walking at me. Ding! I'm gonna file that away, and now I'm gonna use that to kill people. How freaky is that? So the police gave him the idea, probably.
That is probably what happened. I actually hadn't thought about that before, but that makes a lot of sense.
So smart of
You're
you.
super smart. I'm so happy I had you on here. Another thing that you should know is that Michael he survived, and then he had he sort of let out a cry of pain after he thought the Zodiac had left, but the Zodiac had not left. The Zodiac comes back. It's when he comes back that Michael is able to get a little bit of a look at the Zodiac, where we get some of the first artist renderings of what the Zodiac might have looked like. And unfortunately, and this is a frustrating part of this case, is that the Zodiac has basically always been described whenever he's been seen as a straight, or not a straight, he could be super gay, a white male guy, like just a guy, like he has really sort of bland features. The only thing that we know is that he has a distinctive widow's peak that other people have described, but he just looks like a man.
And according to certain accounts, Majot really could only identify the guy possibly by silhouette.
Yes.
And some of the differences between, if you're going by the documentary Zodiac by David Fincher, that's not a documentary, it's a movie starring Mark Ruffalo and Jake Gyllenhaal. And there were a lot of things. And when they asked Fincher, when he was making the movie, are you keeping this to facts? He said, no, not necessarily. The only thing I want to keep it true to is that I can back everything up with at least one police report. And two, I don't want to convict the guy that we think did it. I instead want to stay true to the beliefs of every character as to who they think the murderer is at any given time. So along the way, you get certain details that are different, like what apparently happened was, in the movie, it seems like Majot's able to identify the killer by looking straight at the face, but no, according to later accounts, he could only identify a silhouette because he was so dark and there was just a flashlight.
And he'd just been shot.
Which,
so the level of shock that you're going through.
There's no way to know that unless you've been shot, though.
That's true. I mean, that's a very good point, but it's hard.
That's a great question for people who are watching. Have you been shot before? And if so, what do you feel like after? Do you think you'd be able?
Was your thought process coherent?
Yeah. I want to know.
That's a very good question, but I want to talk about the first contact that the Zodiac makes, because before we know that he wrote letters, before the first received confirmed letters of the Zodiac, he gives a phone call to the police, and this phone call has really stuck with me as something super eerie. So after this murder, or what he thinks is a murder, although Michael fortunately did survive, he calls and he reports what happened. He says it's double homicide, just sort of lays out really plain details, doesn't respond to any of the questioning from the 911 operator, and then he also claims responsibility for the murder that happened on December 20th of Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. And then before he hangs up, and this is what's really stuck with me, he says, goodbye, something like that. The operator, you can see multiple videos online of her talking about receiving this phone call, and she says, I know it sounds weird when you repeat it back, there's no way to do it justice, but there was something, he had this very monotone voice, this very even tone, and then at the end he had this pause and then really drew out the word goodbye before he hung up.
Like when you logged off of AOL. Goodbye.
Yeah, actually something creepy like that.
Creepy. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I wish you didn't tell me that.
Brett, so thus far we've covered the first four, or the first four victims of the Zodiac, and there's been no sign of sexual assault or sexual gratification. There isn't a use of great force, blunt force. What do you think is the significance of that?
I think he just wanted to kill people. I think this symbolizes a detachment from reality, a numbness of character, especially in the monotone voice that was described. So he feels like ethereal, and he just wants to do this. It's not that crime of passion where you go and do it. He just wants to. He's probably been thinking about this, and he's probably killed an animal or two.
I think that's safe to say.
That's not outside the realm of possibilities. In fact, that's probably, they say people torture animals first, so he's probably done this to animals, and he's experimenting.
Yeah.
He wants to see what his style is, because he's learning just as much as the police are. And I don't know if you've ever done something wrong, but when you do something wrong and you don't get caught, you're probably like, oh, but I could be caught by that, so I won't do that next time. And I will explicitly not do it, and now I know what kinds of things I can say that won't necessarily incriminate me.
So you think he's correcting and learning?
I think he's just honing his craft.
Yeah.
You know? And he probably feels like he's an artist. And he
wanted the recognition for the work that he probably considered he was doing, but the next murder just completely flips the script on everything that we've talked about, which is, I think this next murder that we're going to talk about is the reason why he is so infamous today, because it's just so truly bizarre. Let's take a look at this next hit.
September 27th, 1969, Lake Berryessa, a few miles north of Vallejo, just less than 3 months after the last murder attributed to the Zodiac. It is here that Celia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, a young college couple, are on a romantic date, alone together, or so they think. When Cecilia sees a man hiding behind a nearby tree, Brian tells her not to worry. The couple are startled as the man approaches holding a gun. Sonoma County Sheriff's Deputy Ray Land was first on the scene.
The guy told him to take the money. He said, I don't want it. Says, all I want to do is kill you people. I have to kill you. The boy asked him, said, you really mean that? And he said, yes, I mean it. Says, well, he said, if you're going to kill me first, because I can't stand to see the girl be stabbed.
Brian is stabbed 7 times as he lays on the ground with a punctured lung, slowly bleeding. The Zodiac moves to Cecilia, stabbing her 10 times. Calmly, the man called the Zodiac walks away, disappearing into the woods.
So again, the man actually does end up surviving, and the girl that he was with does pass away. Something that they didn't mention in that clip that I think is important is that the Zodiac comes out wearing a costume. And this is another famous image that we see of the Zodiac. He has like a mask on, or almost like a hoodie drape thing, and it has the Zodiac symbol on it.
If you want to draw a comparison in your mind, just think of the Monty Python and the Holy Grail guy who says it's merely a flesh wound. He's dressed like a knight with a hood like that, and that's it.
That is exactly what it looks. That's a very strong comparison. It's a weird comparison, but it's strong.
What do you think? What do you think about the murders now that we've had 3 couples?
Well, we've had 3 couples on dates. I think that is notable for sure. To me, it would imply maybe some animosity towards intimacy. Like it's something that he can't really understand, something that maybe angers him. There's been a lot of talk that whoever the Zodiac was probably didn't thrive in social situations. And so people connecting in this way really angered him, and he preyed upon that. You know, the first 2 murders specifically were in Lover's Lane type areas. Places where people were known to go to canoodle and whatnot. And I think that we can sort of say the same thing about what happened down by the lake here. I don't know if it was a Lover's Lane type of a situation.
Down by the lake during a picnic. That was like a good date. You ever had those dates? Like, you know what I'm going to do today? Something romantic. We're going to go for a picnic.
Yeah. You know what I think is interesting about this murder as well, though, is one, the costume is so weird. The mode of attack, the speaking to his victims is strange. That's something that he had never done before, as far as we know. It seems like he just sort of shot and left the scene. Now he's talking to them. He's giving them instructions to tie each other up. It just seems almost like a completely different killer, which is, feeds into a theory that we'll probably talk about a little bit later.
And I think this one's actually scarier because it's broad daylight.
I was just going to say, broad daylight, out in the open. There was a man and his son fishing not very far away from when this all went down. And I think they heard the screaming after the Zodiac had left. And after the Zodiac left the site, after apparently he just calmly walked away, which is, again, his even keel temperament, as far as we know, is what is so unsettling about this killer. He walks away, and about an hour after the crime, he calls the Napa County Sheriff's Office on a payphone, and he reports the crime. He also wrote on the lover's car the date, the sign of the Zodiac, and the people dead. And they traced the phone call to an abandoned phone booth. And when the police arrived there, the receiver was still hanging, was just swinging, which I think is just so eerie. And this would be the
Left us hanging.
Yeah, he certainly left us hanging about, oh my, Brett, damn
Creepy.
it. So basically what we see in this, after this crime, is that there is, he throws out the rule book. There is no MO for him. But there is a repetition in taunting the police. This is now his favorite thing to do. He wants to write his symbol everywhere. He wants to write it on his own costume. He wants to write it on the side of cars. He wants to write it in his letters. He wants to make sure that people know his name.
Does he
is the
think of
Zodiac.
himself as a superhero or a supervillain? Like Superman has an emblem. The
Right.
Green Lantern has an emblem.
Yeah.
This is his emblem. He's branding himself.
And going into his final confirmed killing, which is again so completely different from anything that we've seen from the Zodiac before. Let's take a look at that final murder of the Zodiac killer.
Downtown San Francisco, a little before 10 p.m. Cabbie Paul Stein picks up a fare in front of the St. Francis Hotel and takes a 10-minute drive to the big money neighborhood of Presidio Heights. The fare directs Stein to stop at the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets, puts a 9mm pistol to the cabbie's head, and pulls the trigger. Across the street and up a flight of stairs, a teenage girl happens to look out the window. She sees a man get out of the cab and begin to wipe down the outside of the car. After a bit, he walks down Cherry Street toward 1,400 acres of park known as the Presidio. The teen's brother picks up the phone and calls police.
Okay, this is the murder that drives me crazy because it must have been the timing of it all, because the police were really on site pretty soon after this went down. The Zodiac must have just rounded the corner on Cherry Street when the police arrived. It must have been really, really quick. And then there's a false police report that goes out that says that they are looking for an African-American male. Right, I'm not sure how this false description happened, because over the phone, he was described as a white male was wiping down the car. They thought maybe a robbery had taken place. It doesn't make any sense here how this happened and how the police must have just missed the Zodiac. And then there are some conflicting reports from the Zodiac and from the police that they interacted directly with each other. So the police say that they were driving and they observed maybe a suspicious-looking white dude walking in the area of the murder, but given that the description that they were looking for out on the police blotter was an African-American male, they didn't stop, but they noticed him and they got a look at his face. And that's where we get another infamous sketch of the Zodiac. Now, according to the Zodiac, when he wrote to police, he said that the police asked him, hey, have you seen anything suspicious? And he responded to them and he said, yeah, I saw a man waving a gun running down the street. And he went the opposite way, and the police were like, got it, and then they left. It's hard to know who to believe. I'm going to go with the police on this one, because I think that it seems like a very Zodiac thing that he would want to throw it to make the police look extra bad and sort of throw it in their face.
Yeah, he may have seen the police, not talk to them. The police are like, no, that doesn't match our description, keep going. But the guy looks a little shifty, but I'm told not to look for that, and then they keep going. And then the Zodiac is like, I will make it extra over the top.
Yeah, and here from this case,
fools.
From this crime scene, we have the working thumbprint, I believe, bloody thumbprint that is widely, considered to be the thumbprint of the Zodiac.
Yeah, let me tell you something about the Presidio in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Presidio is a otherworldly experience if you're in San Francisco. San Francisco, you think about it, full house, there's cool houses and everything's all like lined up. It's a cosmopolitan area with hills. The Presidio is like giant eucalyptus trees, large grassy areas. It's a park that has been the same, literally the same, since the Spanish owned California. It is this beautiful, go Google pictures of it, and you can smell it when you're close. You can smell the fresh air of the Presidio. So it is a perfect place. It's dark, there's no people around. It's the perfect place to commit a murder and then just kind of walk around. And then fitting into the narrative of during the broad daylight, this guy was able to walk around in a weird outfit and shoot people and then just kind of walk away and disappear. The same way he was able to walk through the streets of San Francisco and disappear, he had he had crime camo. He just looks like a schlubby white dude.
Yeah.
And people aren't like, oh, the schlubby white dude's committing the murder because of racism.
No, I think that's a really good...
That's camouflage if you're a murderer. And it's weird because if you look at all the photos, it's all like white dudes who fucking kill a lot of people like psychos.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to sort of end this segment. We broke down the murders, exactly what happened, all the confirmed killings that we have. But there is still so much more to talk about with the Zodiac. He is notorious because he interacted directly with the police. And when we come back, we're going to tell you all about those interactions.